you're not really that far away from putting another team on the field that can easily win 10 games.
Mm-hmm. Welcome back to the ANF Podcast, where we cover Iowa sports.
Today we're going to do an instant reaction to the Jay Higgins news. He just decided to come back for his 5th year.
Yeah, about actually 10 minutes or 5 minutes before we came over to the studio, he announced he's coming back, which is huge news, not only for him, but it might have some impact on other decisions.
Yep, and then we're also going to give our quick thoughts on the Big Ten title game and then wrap it up with a full discussion of the Tennessee-Iowa game. But instant reaction to the Jay Higgins news, we've been going back and forth on this for the better part of the last 2 weeks. It's under my impression, and this is kind of the impression I've had for the better part of 3 or 4 years now. If you put together a fantastic year where you are eligible for the NFL draft, it almost seems like every time they capitalize on that for profit. Depends on your draft capital where you're standing at, but almost you talk back to Imani Hooker. Even Anthony Nelson had an opportunity to come back and probably be a higher draft pick.
It has changed recently, though. You think back, I think the big offseason when we had a lot of returners was 2021 to 2022. We had Riley Moss come back after DB of the year in the Big Ten. Jack Campbell came back, and Laporta came back. And truly it all benefited those players. And I think that helps with the current coaching staff's pitch to these players. But Campbell could have left. I think he would have probably fallen to the 3rd or 4th round after his junior year.
Yeah, wouldn't be a Buckets Award winner.
I think Laporta in the same kind of, he might have fallen a little farther. I think putting another full year.
Laporta would have probably been pretty similar. I think what he had already had on tape.
He did.
The fact that he came back and ended up as a really early on 2nd round pick, it's demonstrating that it isn't going to impact your draft value unless you have some significant injury. I mean, he didn't even play the final game of the season after his injury against Minnesota. So he still dealt with injuries, but was able to capitalize on it.
Yeah.
Riley Moss, I think, is also a unique scenario too, where I couldn't, add that to the equation because he was dealing with an injury and wasn't going to probably be able to run as well as he wanted to. But yeah, with Higgins coming back, you just stacked. I don't know how many tackles he finished with. It probably was in like the 130 realm, 140.
Yeah. I mean, it was an incredible year for him. And I basically had written him off.
And he's got his degree too. So that's even part. But we were trying to put together what amount of money can allow for that. And also, I don't know if some people don't understand how NFL contracts work, but so where would you project him out right now if he left after the season? 1 year of tape, had a great season, but
I'd say 5th round or later.
Yeah.
So and then maybe hanging on as a undrafted free agent. And he did have a great year, but I'm guessing his 40s is going to be in the 4.6, 4.7 range. Yeah. He's a big guy. He's not the biggest guy.
Yeah.
And that position, the middle linebacker position, it's probably one other than safety,
least value position,
and guard. In running back, it's one of the most least value positions in the NFL now. They don't really draft high. Campbell's kind of an outlier and was a pick that was questioned by the Lions. Yeah. It obviously worked out for him. I don't know if his combine is going to be
the other guys you'll see actually go high in that scenario. Josie Jewell was a back-to-back All-American.
Yeah.
Still fell to the 4th or 5th round.
Yeah.
But usually if you're going to be, a 1st round or 2nd round or even 3rd round, you're going to have to run a 4.4, 4.5.
Yeah, you just can't go into the combine and have a good combine or average combine. You have to have an elite combine to go in the first 3 rounds. And that's for any position.
Yeah.
It's because there are so many positions to draft from.
Well, it's just the reality of football. It's not played between the tackles anymore, especially in the NFL. It's, guard and athletic running backs in the flats. It's guard and slot receivers. You have to be a very unique player to fit that mold now.
Yeah. And honestly, but Higgins, even coming to this year, we did him on our draft board. I mean, we did an entire Twitter draft board before the season. And some people commented, maybe Higgins might be a future draft pick. And I always kind of push back that in my mind and not in the comments. But he's definitely improved his draft position a lot. It's just now, he can guarantee himself money now. Yeah. He can get money to come back. We don't know how much it is.
Even if he got hurt, even if he gets hurt his next year, he still will be a draft pick just because of the tape he already has out.
Yeah.
But I think what they're selling him is that, if you go out this year, you could be a 6th or 7th rounder, just by.
There's a reality where he goes higher than that too. I think about it.
But the jump for if he, comes back and wins the Buckets, first team all Big Ten, resound best linebacker in the Big Ten, that now carries you into a 2nd or 3rd round grade.
It's a resume building year.
Yeah.
Because preseason he's going to be 1st or 2nd team all Big Ten. He could be up for,
player of the year.
Linebacker of the year in the preseason. And he's going to have all that hype coming in. And that really would have helped Campbell out too.
Yeah.
Campbell came in with a lot of hype. And, you have a lot of preseason hype, and then you have another 100 tackle plus year. You stack 2, All-American seasons together. Maybe you overcome maybe a combine that's not going to be, in the 95th percentile, 99th percentile for all those measurables. And they're going to see you as a football player.
Yeah.
And you get into that Joseph Jewell. I think he went 4th round.
Fourth round, yeah.
I can't remember for sure, but that's where his kind of the pitch is going forward. And it's really exciting to think about all right, Higgins is coming back. That's a captain. That's a guy who could have left and, made money.
Yeah.
There's guys like Schulte and Castro now probably rethinking their decision, and that impacts their decision if he's coming back. Nick Jackson, who's got his waiver for an additional year. I'm starting to think that actually maybe impacted Higgins coming back, knowing that he could play alongside Jackson again. And if both those guys come back, and Castro or Schulte come back, you really have a great building blocks for next year.
Unbelievable. I mean, that would immediately catapult us to, all-star defensive level.
Yeah.
Because the only hole you have next year, it's like glaring, is linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
And granted, I like a lot of the guys that are coming. Like, there's a lot of redshirt juniors out there.
There's a lot of
who could
bodies.
step in and be a Higgins.
But if you lose Jackson and Higgins at the same time, there's legitimately no experience in the entire room.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it was going to be a circle of the preseason. I'm like, linebacker is a question mark. Obviously, we like the bodies like in Shire and Cater and all those guys. But yeah, it's just going to be interesting how that plays out.
I just think just taking the evolution of NIL, though, has allowed players to take that chance now. Higgins in prior years, granted, you could have looked at like a Campbell and a Josie, how they became better players and, improved their draft stock. When $800K at worst is sitting on the table in front of you for next year, that's where the why people want to say no to it.
Right.
But now if you can, we don't know how much he's getting paid. You have to venture in with, even just college tuition thrown in there. That's maybe a six-figure package.
Right.
And that guaranteed money.
Maybe with some.
While you also get to play some college ball, not having to step into an NFL football field.
Yeah, you pick up some advertisements as well.
Yeah.
You never, you can't really bake in what maybe some deals he's been promised or already signed for next year.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think it's time to move into the reaction to the Big Ten title game.
We are happy to announce a new sponsor for the ANF Podcast. The ANF Podcast is sponsored by Eye Surgeons Associates, proudly serving Eastern Iowa and Western Illinois for all your eye care needs for over 40 years.
It actually, you're looking at the full scope of it and the yards differential and how the defense played. There was an opportunity there. And this team as a whole really had an opportunity to truly compete for a Big Ten title.
Against the number one team in the country.
Without injuries, if you have Cade, Lachey, and all in that game, and Cooper, and with the defensive performance, man, all the preseason hype you had and all the expectations that we've sold and everyone else sold going into the year and what Cade came here for, the writing was there for a Kirk type of game to win that game. Even with the ineptitude on offense, if we don't give up that special teams touchdown, and we don't fumble in a weird way, we lose a turbo margin like we did.
Jackson catches a pick in his chest.
Right. And I think
we've done this. The issues we keep on having to do this where we recount 3 plays if they flipped. But that's because the other 49 was the best defense that Michigan's faced in 10 years.
Yeah.
That's the lowest yards per play that Harbaugh has had since he came to Michigan. And that's with probably his most talented team.
Yeah.
Like, it can't be undersold how good of a defensive effort that was. Granted, you bake in that Michigan took a 10-0 lead early in the game. Are they going to shell up to some degree?
Right.
They did, but they also have they're competing for a number 1 seed. So you can't. They were also incentivized to score.
It's because they just didn't dominate the line of scrimmage like they had in other games, and the physicality that we talked about in our preview. It played out early in that game.
Yeah.
You saw one time Corum got smacked by Castro in the 3rd level.
Well, that was the first time I've seen him. He's an overly physical back.
Yeah.
And we kind of picked up on it. I think of his first 3 or 4 carries, he got popped every single time. Like, significant hits you don't see a lot in college football. The 4th time he got to the 2nd level and he had an opportunity to kind of, take 2 hits and get 2 more, he turtled up. And I was like, man. To see him do that in that moment, it was kind of a realization of what we talked about for the whole season. Though it's like we're not over promising what this Iowa defense is. It's a unique challenge, and it's not by something that someone who watches football on the weekends would understand.
Yeah,
it's that there's real consequences that's being played out. It's we could always talk about what that fill quote is. It's like at what cost?
Yeah.
And at what cost is when it can, affect a team who's number one in the country in the Big Ten title game. That's when it's a real thing.
It's a real football principle.
Yeah.
And it was just a frustrating game as a whole because we went into it saying like we truly haven't been able to play Kirk ball in a big time game like that in a while. And when the punt return happened, it was like, there it is.
Yeah.
Like everyone with a brain knew when we were down 10-0, like it was going to take not just like the 3 breaks we needed, but like the 6.
Yeah.
And it's just like the Penn State game this year where you have a special team breakdown when it's a 3-0 game and you've kind of brought them into the game, where you want to be.
Yep.
And you can tell your defensive line's holding up. So it's going to be a tough game no matter what.
Up to is going to be on the 6-yard line for
right.
tackle.
And you maybe a 3 and out. And
you get the tip pass, you get the pick.
But maybe it's just the Brian Ferentz fault, like firing. You need that because you shouldn't be
10-0, the game's done.
Exactly.
Yeah. In the first quarter.
With that type of defense.
Yeah.
Like maybe if you had a 30th rate defense and went down 10-0, maybe you lose. But with that defense, a 10-0 game, if the defense knows it can keep on playing and the offense can put together a touchdown drive one time. And we knew we couldn't do that.
I mean, even down 10-0 that early in the game, all you then have to stack on top of it is a drive to the 50 again.
Right.
And you replay that game.
But
we only got to play that game, twice against Penn State, once against Michigan.
Yeah.
Like, that's why we always make this point. I disagree with occasionally where, if Iowa can get to a top 60 offense.
Yeah.
But it has to be a top 60 offense playing the style that we're currently playing, minimizing mistakes, ball control, which truly, if you are like a top 60 offense in the current college football scheme, running that style, you think about back to Wisco when they scored 40 points a game. Like that was truly like a top 5 or 6 offense in college football because of the lack of possessions they had.
Yeah.
So you can't stack up these insane numbers.
Yeah.
And then you also combine that with Iowa's bend don't break defense. You get like a really small number of possessions a game. That doesn't allow you to be a sexy offensive numbers team.
Yeah.
But that's when you are a bad offensive numbers team and then you stack together, a really small sample size.
Yeah.
That's where you get these really gaudy numbers.
It was frustrating because you just didn't have a proof of concept.
Yeah.
Again, like you're looking for, you play this style to win beat your rivals, win in the Midwest, and compete to be the higher end of the Big Ten. But you also run this scheme to drag these teams into games, and we haven't been able to do it lately. Like it's not what 2002 to 2017 was.
Yeah.
2018, since these offenses have expanded, maybe there's we don't have the 2 special teams disasters in the 2 games this year against top teams, but maybe it's more than that. And that's like
just a quick callback though. Like I was just watching the 05 Capital One Bowl against LSU, the game we won. Granted, you blocked 2 punts in that game, but we were still able to survive in like so many disastrous plays.
Yeah, the touchdown right before half Broussard.
Well, then we got a block punt and take through a pick on the next play. Like you go back and actually watch us. Like we were a far more chaotic team that year because we couldn't run the ball. We were just hucking around.
But the offense actually had a pulse.
But the offense had a pulse, and we're kind of guilty of this own sickness where since we've had such good results 2 of the last 3 years, we can even spell off like, okay, we're taking no chance as an offense. You scrape away. We don't run the score on bad teams. You scrape away Deacon's 2 fumbles on our own and against Minnesota, we're an 11-1 team.
Yeah.
But it just has to improve. And hopefully as we enter this NIL era, we talked about it before the season. Like maybe this is just the new Iowa where you grab a Caleb Brown, Eric All, and Cade McNamara every year where you can fill in your skill position, holes that have existed for 2 decades now with just backups from the top tier programs. I think as we move into this next year, that'll be a very interesting thing how it evolves because you can grab another receiver. Maybe you can grab a backup QB. You're not really that far away from putting another team on the field that can easily win 10 games.
I think it's time to break down the...
Yeah, I don't have anything else in the Big Ten title game.
Let's preview the Tennessee game.
Yeah.
So we're going to start with our defense first. So if we're going to talk about Iowa's offense, and obviously new OC is going to be hired soon. Tennessee is the most modern offense in college football to date. And the way they're trying to stretch you horizontally, vertically, pace of play, it's essentially... they're pushing every button offensively they can. And
it's the ultimate hire wire act too.
Right. And it's because they can recruit the athletes they can, and they got the quarterbacks they can bring in. But it's really enjoyable to watch.
Yeah.
So if you haven't watched Tennessee and you haven't watched them in depth, the one stat I'd point to the most is actually it's not even a stat, just an aspect of their offense. Their center to their receiver distance. So the measure of yardage horizontally on the field is the longest in college football. So what they're trying to do is really spread you not only vertically through their deep passing game, but horizontally at the start of every play. And they're trying to create essentially 3 different plays within one. And it's probably the most similar to the Utah State offense we played this year with a lot of QB reads and bubble screens. But they're trying to put 7 in the box generally is their goal. Maybe 8 if they have a tight end insert they're going to play. And they're going to try to stack at least 1 receivers, which they're nearly touching just in a stacked formation. And they're going to try to push them all the way out to the sideline, nearly touching the sideline. And so what you're trying to do is basically have a math equation every single play. Like, all right, we have a bubble over there that has to require a corner and a safety over the top. And we're going to stretch you on the opposite side with another, bubble, or maybe just 1 receiver, but he's going to be pushed all the way to the edge of the field. And then within the box, we're always going to have a man advantage because we're going to try to press you vertically, so you have to keep 2 high safeties at all times. So the SEC, the way they've countered this, and actually a lot of, modern teams have gone to this, is to actually run 3 defensive linemen. We're not going to do that. We're going to run our 4.
I think we
defensive
essentially
linemen.
might, because we will be standing a guy up who we'll have a Hurkett or Evans always with the foot up. I think you'll have to.
I think it's a good guess.
I think they're going to have to kind of, alter our scheme just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we'll have a guy that stands up. My first point about it is, this alters the game a ton. There's a reason that a lot of teams don't run this. It's because it's kind of the opposite of what Iowa does from a recruiting standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's the inverse. It's where their head coach can go to the strongest armed QB in the country and the fastest receiver and says, we're going to give you the most space and have you throw NFL throws every single throw.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be no place better that you can showcase your actual NFL talent than this scheme.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's a double-edged sword because you're asking college QBs to make NFL throws every throw.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see it with Milton. Like, you watch his highlights back, it's like, holy cow. Like, when this looks good and when he makes the throw he needs to make, it seems almost like an impossible problem to solve.
Yeah.
But I think 2 things I want to know on the front end of it. Most of why this scheme is ran is before their run game.
Oh, yeah.
And you see why they're actually successful. Most of their explosive plays is because you have, a really good running back who gets a well-blocked play,
Mm-hmm.
and then he's got guys coming from, at least 1.5 yards further than they usually would be.
Yep.
And that allows him to, be creative in space and house something.
Yeah.
I think that's, if you had to sell anything, we're going to be an explosive team, but it's so high wire. It really, the contrast of styles is going to be so interesting.
Yeah. Well, I think what it's trying to do, what it's missing from this year to the previous year, is the 9 route, the deep ball. I think Milton it was a stat like probably 2/3 of the way through the year, so I don't know if it's still true, but he was like less than 30% on completion percentage over 20 yards, air yards. And so when they had Hendon Hooker and they had Cedric and they had Jalen Hyatt and they could press that 9 route, it was probably the most explosive offense last year in the country, like week to week, because that 9 route, you really had no solution to it. You had to give the run, you had to give a bubble, and then all of a sudden they beat you deep or they beat you on deep end. And Milton just hasn't been able to stretch teams vertically as much. And you can tell in their play calling, they don't trust it as much. They'd like to run them more.
I think there has to be a point about teams learning how to play it too.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's this element where, because of their alignment, they're not allowing for out routes don't exist.
Yeah.
So then your counter to inside leverage, so a DB lineup on your inside, your only counter to that is a 9 route or a double move.
Mm-hmm.
So then that equation gets pretty simple for the DB, especially if you're a well-taught zone team. Okay, give ground, wait for the cut, and then just make sure you cut late enough so it's not, a quick 1-2 step double move.
Yeah.
But why I think this system, you always look at these systems that are like deviate so far from other ones.
Mm-hmm.
It's what you find out is eventually they have these, crumbling errors where it falls apart once you get it figured out. And I think where it may be at is that 15-yard throw is now essentially like a 22-yard throw.
Mm-hmm.
So when they run that deep post, or they run that like kind of deeper slant, that air time the ball's in the air is just long enough for the DB to recover to it. And there's always that's just the beauty.
I would push back on that a little bit. I don't think it's essentially the plays being, defenses are figuring out. I think their personnel is just radically different.
Yeah, it's just not as good.
And I think that's my main point is like you turn on the film of this Tennessee team and it just doesn't have the receivers and quarterback play I had last year. Milton is not a decisive thrower.
Yeah.
And he's inaccurate when he does. He's 64% in a system that's going to give you a lot of open throws.
Yeah.
So I think he's missing high in big situations. He doesn't have the ability to press you downfield. I don't find anything. It is a radical style. It does it is unique for a reason. But Heupel had success at other levels, and I think he still is the number one mind in college football offensively, and it's why it's working at a program like Tennessee in the first place. It's now they're going to have Nico for next year, the number 2 overall quarterback.
Yeah.
I would be hard pressed. I think this is more of a bridge year for them offensively. I think they're going to recruit some receivers, to come into the system, and you're going to bring in a 5-star number 2 overall player in the country at quarterback.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to make a lot more sense, and it's going to flow a lot better. And they were good offensively this year already.
I think that's probably why I not turn my nose up at it, but it's like you need such good players.
You need them all, immense talent.
Yeah.
You have to have.
Which, that to double down on something, it's like, it does make sense to be like, hey, we're going to be a showcase team for receiver and quarterback.
Right.
If you're going to actually be a team that takes the next step in college football, it's because of those 2 aspects.
Yeah, and it worked. Their quarterback next year is going to be, was coveted by every major program.
It just what I'm trying to reiterate is that there are sacrifices.
They are, yeah.
And even within the bubble game, when you space guys out that far, like granted, yes, you're creating extra space for everyone else. I think if you had to actually break down and talk to him about what the space he's trying to create, it's for guard, center guard.
It's a run game.
It's a run game.
There's no doubt about that.
But it's you have to match it with such insane receiver talent.
Yeah.
Like everyone has to be able to get over the top.
Mm-hmm.
If there isn't a threat of him, because that ball, even if the guy didn't win by that much, if it's your typical 9 ball, it's your typical slot seam shot.
How far that ball
has to travel. Like he has to have a step and a half.
Yeah.
Or the guy's going to catch up and break it up.
Right.
So they're sacrificing a lot, and it's just a hyper aggressive style.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't have, Jalen Hyatt and Hendon Hooker,
yeah,
their offensive output hasn't been great this year.
It's been solid still.
But you look at some of the score, and it's like, they scored, well on Alabama. They scored. It's still a very good offense.
It's not what it used to be. Yeah.
You're still having games where you score 7 against Missouri.
Right.
Missouri's not some world-beating team.
Yeah.
That's why I'm really excited just to see, because in my mind, okay, what does Iowa like to do? We like to force deep shots where we can, hold inside leverage and have a guy be just fast enough to keep it with a deep ball.
Yeah.
Milton's going to press that button for sure. He's got all the talent, the receivers to do it. We also like to say, okay, we're going to put 5 in the box against your 6.
Yeah.
We can still win that equation for a 3-yard gain.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the 2 things they're asking us to do is what we like, our ideas of how football works.
Definitely. I think it's a good matchup for like how we're already built.
Yeah.
Like it requires
2 high safety looks all day.
It requires passive looks the entire time. Iowa's in a passive look in its base set.
Yeah.
It's interesting too. It's fun to watch their box offensive play. Like it behaves just like the old Urban Meyer Ohio State teams, because they're going to run Milton about 12 times a game.
Yeah.
8 to 12 times a game. Sometimes they're going to go 4 wide with 4 receivers and have a tight end insert, and they're just going to run him 6 on 4, 6 on 5 in the box with him at a running back, essentially.
Yeah.
And it works because he's a very good athlete. And then they can run a lot of really small games in there. They can do a double pull. I've seen them do even an individual tackle pull from left tackle to the opposite side.
Yeah.
A big issue for this game is they lost their 1,000-yard rusher. He opted out. And they lost their backup running back as well. Smalls, who was I think he was on their all-time list of like rushers. I think he got beat out by their starter.
Yeah. Wright was really good though.
Wright was really good.
Why this team was good.
Yeah. But now you have Sampson, who's still a very solid back, but I think the true freshman is now they're going to be their second carries. But they want to run those backups 12 times a game. So you're going to a true freshman now instead of a stable of 3 backs that all can really play.
Yeah.
So that's a really big, important issue with this game, because their passing game Squirrel White's a very good player. He's gonna have a shot at the NFL. They love to use him on 3rd down in the slot position to get a matchup on a linebacker or safety. Other than him, I can't remember. Is it Keaton? They're number 9.
Yeah,
he's a really good X receiver, but they don't really have that dynamic passing game.
Too. 87. I don't know his last name, but I saw enough tape him. It's like, okay, like you can isolate him and he can make plays.
Right. But you're going to, most likely with that running back situation, it's going to be kind of in Milton's hands to win this game.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why he didn't succeed at Michigan, the reason why he went 8-4 at Tennessee and they really couldn't get over the hump in bigger games is that, he just can't run this system to the nth degree they wanted to. And he's going to get drafted, though. He's going to be a draft pick in the NFL draft.
I mean, I would be hard-pressed to find so many players in college football that I would draft over him. It's a 4th or 5th round QB. Take a chance.
It's a great project.
Find a QB coach who can teach him how to play QB at a high level because he's got like the most raw talent of almost any QB you can ask for. He's a lot like an Anthony Richardson in that facet.
Yeah, he's definitely worth 6, late round flyer.
Yeah, no matter
Let's go build this guy up. Like he's gonna be a great backup QB. You probably can put him behind, Hurts or Fields or something like that, where he can run the offense still.
Yeah, exactly.
Or Lamar, something like that.
Yeah, Bears, Eagles. Anyone's got a big athletic QB.
Right.
This could be
Colts.
This could be your guy you grow.
Yeah, exactly. Or just have as a guy who can still run the system if he goes down.
If I had to project. Because I don't know how this interaction is going to occur, especially without Cooper, where it's going to be Deshaun Lee and Jamari against their receivers. SEC is going to show up at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Their defense has been particularly great this year.
They're
missing offensive talent.
Mm-hmm.
It's still going to be an SEC game where every guy they put on the field is going to be just a little bit stronger, a little bit faster.
Yeah.
If I had to point to anything where I'm looking for our defense, do we ever get beat by the 9 ball? Because if that's in play when we play them, then we will lose by 2 to 3 scores.
Yeah.
If that's a thing they can hit 2-3 times, or we have to really start backing up, even with our passive sets and our over the top zone, is that still something that with just how they run their offense, it still works?
Yeah.
That's the question. So I don't know how that interaction is going to occur. I have a feeling just because of how we teach zone defense, we're going to be comfortable there.
Yeah.
And we're going to require, him to make 2 or 3 big time throws at 15 to 20 yards. And how accurate he is that day is going to be determined on how successful they are.
Yeah.
But I like to reiterate again, I think our defense is very well situated to play a style where they're going to try and high wire, and we're going to be very comfortable making them do that.
Yeah, and I think you said that perfectly. I think their defense is going to have a hard time. We're built to beat them in our current setup, in our current.
We don't have to
deviate. This game will come down to Milton. Can he make the big time throws when he has to? Can he pick up the third downs? Because their current system, they're going to be able to move the ball between the 20s.
Yeah.
They got enough athletes. Their offensive line's big enough. They're going to have enough options to go to. Can Milton be a good decision maker in the run game? When they option him, they'll pitch it sometimes with them. Can he pick up third downs? It seems like it's going to all fall on him. And for such a good defense to play a QB that hasn't really proven in that moment that he can do it on a consistent basis, it lends me to believe that we're actually going to have success against this offense to hold them probably less than 17 points. Is my guess.
I think it's a lot of field goals because again, with this style of scheme, you are a shot team,
right?
The scheme doesn't make sense in the red zone.
Yeah,
it doesn't.
Where the safeties
are up. Then you've limited all this space. You've tried to create double moves on the outside. You're running to nowhere.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where it's between the 20s.
Yeah.
How's this going to look? And that's just if you could point to one thing for since 2018. How many teams have been able to move the ball between the 20s since I was modernized and went to the cash position? How many teams can move the ball between the 20s? But then the minute they get to the red zone, a lot of them almost punt it. They're like, we're just going to run 3 times.
Yeah.
They just completely bail out of their schemes because when you get that light box in the red zone, they're terrified of throwing in the 2 safeties with eyes on the ball.
Yeah.
And then they can't run.
Yeah.
So it's such a great style. And, it gives the defense another opportunity to prove they're top 5 in the country.
Yeah. I think it's time to move to the side of the ball that Tennessee has not excelled at to an extent. But they play in the SEC.
Yeah.
And I think, going back and rewatching a lot of their games these past few weeks, you watch them against Georgia, Alabama, Kentucky, Texas A&M. Their defense, it's just they gave up 30 points in this game, 40 points in this game. It's surprising.
Yeah.
Because their front 7, they have some actually very important opt-outs on defense. Obviously, they lose Wright at running back on offense. But defense, they lose about 6 players in their secondary, not all starters, but they lose 2 starters that played, over 10 games. And they actually have one aspect about their defense that Iowa could take advantage of. They run a 4-2-5 where they have a cash player as a star player, as a rolled up safety, and they're to be that fifth DB. And they don't sub them off the field in any situation. I think maybe 3 tight ends would maybe trigger it. But generally, when you bring 2 tight ends in the field, most teams will bring a linebacker on. That's kind of like the average thing you would do, as well Iowa would do if we saw 2 tight ends on the field. Some teams go even more aggressive than that. Michigan, Purdue, and the Illini. That's Purdue and Illini's natural sets to have 5 defensive linemen. But Michigan would bring a defensive D tackle on the field. So if you sub out a safety to a D tackle, think about the size difference. That personnel is difference. Tennessee, from what I saw against Alabama and Kentucky, ran a lot of 2 tight end sets. They never subbed that 5th safety. So they want to play fast and they want to play light. And we know Iowa's football the last month and a half since November. We've been in 2 tight ends perpetually.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a really key thing is Tennessee going to be in that stubborn sense of are they going to keep that nickelback defender, that hybrid safety, and that safety that they started all 12 games this season, he transferred. So this
is that number 2 that transferred?
Number 12.
Oh.
Number 2 is still playing. He's a very good player.
Number 2 is their best DB.
Yeah. But number 12 was this guy who's, he's been in that role all season. He was 207 pounds, so he played like a linebacker.
That's big enough.
And they rolled him down and didn't look like he got abused in like a physicality standpoint. But I mean, Iowa's got to be going, man, if we can get them in a 4-2-5 against 2 tight ends, we're never going to throw the ball once.
Yeah. Why?
And you look at the rest of their front 7 personnel, it's a strength of their defense. Yeah. I think what they struggled at was safety play and corner play against a high level SEC. We won't be able to abuse it. But that's what the frustrating and hard to envision us succeeding is because their front 7's good.
Yeah, I think their front 7's good. It does. One of the things I wrote down watching back their tape is they do surprisingly get pushed around a fair amount. And, that's far different equation than what we're going to throw at them. Most of these teams have some element of a pass.
I think if this deep front 7 played in the Big Ten, they would be among the top 5.
I don't think so. I think the level of lockouts I saw from them, I saw Missouri games, a lot of big games. Maybe it's more second half stuff. I saw more second half stuff. A lot of them getting engaged and pushed back. I'm watching highlights. I'm not watching every single down.
Yeah.
But I was surprised. I was like, man, that's for SEC D line. That's not what I expected. And granted, I know when we step onto this field, and I think the differentiator there is when a D line only has to play run. That equation of how much to give, how much effort.
It's a Big Ten team too. Yeah. I would push back a lot. I think their front 7 will dominate our front.
I don't see that. But
I see 2 320-pound D tackles.
Yeah.
I see D ends that look like Penn State's D ends, and I see 2 linebackers that are 6'3", 230, and they run. And the personnel, it doesn't look like they're playing like SEC teams in some cases, but just transposing that on, and they played Alabama and Georgia in the first half, and they're getting tackles for loss. They're holding for 2 yards for watching the entire game. It's the defense broke down with the willpower in the second half.
Yeah.
But first half Iowa, there's going to be some NFL D ends and linebackers and D tackles on the field that it looks like we're playing essentially a defense between Wisconsin and Penn State in their front 7 in terms of personnel. It's anyone below Wisconsin, Minnesota, Illinois, and all those guys. This team's better than them in their front 7 in terms of just hat on a hat. It all comes down to, I think just that personnel decision. If they don't play their, a third linebacker, we're going to really struggle to run the ball.
Yeah, it makes sense. I saw them honestly have a lot of communication breakdowns on boot passes too.
Yeah.
So I think having this kind of archaic,
weird system
that we roll out. I think early on we could see some success within the boot game.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a tight end driven game again. And obviously you're going to have Caleb Brown, who I would imagine he'll at least get 12 to 15 touches in this game.
Yeah.
And that's a real option. And it's going to be fun because now, it's odd that's Brian's last game.
Yeah.
But he's got a real piece out wide, which you could go back 2 years since the last time he had a guy he could trust to get the ball and then to make it a tackle, like a move in space. Keegan in probably 2021 was his last guy, and that was a true freshman, Keegan Johnson.
Yeah.
So I think the boot game is going to be pretty effective. We'll have a disagreement on this, and we'll see how it plays out. But I was not overwhelmed with their defensive line play, and I think that will be, success for Iowa. You have to define it in a different segment now.
Yeah,
we're not going to come out and score more than 20 points in this game,
and
that's going to be off turnovers, field position, good punts, returns, stuff like that. But I don't think it's going to be this overwhelming wave that we've seen from Kentucky in 2021.
Right.
Penn State earlier this year.
Mm-hmm.
In any game where that's not the case, with how good our punt game is, how good our defense is, it's going to be 50-50. And that's why the larger line of 8.5, it doesn't make sense to me. And I think that's going to fit. Once we get to the picks, I think that's why I'm going to lean the way I do.
Yeah, I think I don't push back on that at all. I think that's, if I don't see more than...
I'm not saying we're going to line for 200.
Yeah. I think it's going to look uglier until the second half. I think it's going to actually look very ugly at points in the first half, is my prediction, that the offense will have to turtle for a while.
Yeah.
I think they're going to come out with energy, and you're playing...
SEC teams fly around. It usually gets pretty ugly.
And it's just, they've played a higher caliber of athlete at every single position.
Yeah.
Receiver, running back, quarterback, offensive line even. We're not putting out SEC offensive lines. So when they line up against us, they're going to be bigger and faster at every position.
Yeah.
And you play that in the first half when everyone's fresh. There's no contact. There's no,
wearing down.
fatigue. I think it's going to be very hard for us to move the ball in the first half. And I can't remember how many times I've said this, but offenses has to be a fourth quarter game.
Yeah.
And I think our special teams is, best in the country. Defense is, arguably probably the best in the country this year. And we're going to be fully stacked. We have no opt-outs that matter. If we can get to that second half where we can make it a willpower game, and I agree with you then. I think we do have some matchups and some physicality, and they did give up a lot of points in a lot of games for good reasons.
Yeah.
But they also gave up 13 points at Texas A&M, who's just kind of a better version of us.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think that's where we have to live, is we have to just press this game. Manufacture it a little bit. There's going to be points of, true frustration on offense, but I was very comfortable winning these games, and we've just won this way for a long time.
Yeah.
Is Tennessee going to have that same type of mentality and care to win a grindy game?
Yeah.
In the bowl game? I think that's where I can see Kirk imprint himself on this game, where it's going to be gross the entire time, but this is how we win. Yeah. And Tennessee doesn't want to win this way. They don't want to have this drawn out, physical warfare into the fourth quarter. And then,
I think it's a great opportunity for the Big Ten to put a nice stamp on the season. With Northwestern going out and beating Utah, Northwestern's probably third best team in the West this year.
Yeah.
Could probably make an argument that they're second best.
Mm-hmm.
But Utah's not, they got beat up by a lot of the higher teams, but they also competed with Washington until late.
Yeah. Utah's they're one of their pinnacle programs, without a doubt.
You look at Northwestern 7 games in the season, you think they're bottom team in the country.
Mm-hmm.
I think hopefully that's what we end up taking away from this bowl season. The West, top end flight talent, not there.
Yeah.
Can't really compare it to, a conference with Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan.
Yeah.
But the meat of the team, the conference this year was actually fairly good.
Yeah, I think you just cut off Purdue.
Yeah.
Who still had some fight in it and some big, beat Virginia Tech, played Fresno State tough. You cut off Purdue, I think every single program in the Big Ten West would land somewhere between 45 and 20.
A couple of them had some grown-ups too. Northwest Illinois started really slow, but they started playing some really good football.
Yeah.
Especially once they made some QB changes too.
Yeah,
so.
but you can't say that about most conferences and divisions, where there's most likely 3 teams in the, you think of even the East with some really clunkers of teams last few years. The West has always had, basically the worst West team, is probably still the 50th best team, 45th best team. With a few bounces away from winning 7 or 8 games every year in a division that really doesn't have any, bad teams.
Yeah. You want to go into picks now?
Yeah.
So I'm just going to keep it simple since we've had success. It'll be fun. We'll do a count up of our season total, but I think we're probably batting around 65% for wins. I think the plus 8.5 is a very good number.
Yeah.
I want
a lot of points.
You could throw a teaser into it, be 14.5.
Mm-hmm.
My idea about this game is it's either going to be it's going to get ugly, or we're going to have. I just don't know how we're going to play against our defense. If we're going to have a heartbeat or not.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how explosive they could be against us. But I think 8.5 is a good number for if this is competitive. We'll stay underneath that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the under being 36.5. It's they're playing some funky metrics because of Tennessee, and they're just they're trying to imprint. Okay, how does Tennessee with the explosive offense go into this muck it up style?
Mm-hmm.
That's still way too high of a number.
Yeah.
We talked about the reality where they can get over the top, but if we're not letting them get over the top and we can, get them into the red zone,
mm-hmm.
what's to say they don't kick 5 field goals?
Yeah.
that might be a reality of that game.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the under at 36.5 and then the plus 8.5 for Iowa.
What's your final prediction for the game?
I think you'll see. I think we'll get a score set up by a defensive interception or fumble, or a return, and then you'll probably see a stack 2 field goals. I think we end up with around 13. I think we end up losing this game like 13-20.
Yeah,
say 33 total.
Yeah,
it's for Iowa fans, like we've had this 6 weeks, 7 weeks of just selling a team that's just not that good.
Mm-hmm.
But the pieces are there for a really well-established program.
Yeah.
The defensive recruiting, we're going to go into this later in July. Defensive recruiting is so good,
Mm-hmm.
and the retention is so good on the defensive side of the ball. This program is very healthy. You're having an NIL base that's being set up well.
Mm-hmm.
If you can just continue to interject 2 or 3 offensive players every year who want to come compete for a Big Ten title, the playoff's going to be on the line now. We could finagle a playoff home game if you can finish in the top 6 some year.
Mm-hmm.
Which is not out of the question with how good the defense is going to be.
Yeah.
So I think we just have to survive this year.
Mm-hmm.
And going out for what being this one of our last episodes, I'm very happy with where we're at, but I still don't see the team winning just based on the offensive skill talent we can throw out there.
Yeah, for this game. I think it's the same boat for me. I think I'm taking the under. I'm taking Iowa plus 8.5 of the points. I'm going to go with 13-9 loss. I think Tennessee will get to our red zone a few times. They're going to struggle in the red zone to get touchdowns, kick a few field goals. I think we'll put together one drive, in the second half that will get us points, and we'll kind of manufacture off a turnover and a special teams play to get other field goals. I just don't see, with a team as athletic as Tennessee, and the more you watch them, I think their defensive personnel, their front seven is actually very good. And they might, have undisciplined moments, but just the, overall,
aggregate.
Their safeties are huge too. They're like 200-pound safeties that can hit and tackle, and they all play physical. Yeah. I think it's going to look closer to the Kentucky 2021 game where it just, we're just kind of hoping and praying.
State 2018.
Right. Where
everything just blows up the minute the play starts.
Right. Because there's you just need one guy to win, and they're all trying to make plays too.
Yeah.
They're not, they all have the ability to.
Yeah.
They have a 320-pound D tackle that probably runs a 4.9, it looks like.
Yeah.
They just have those type of athletes. So I think 13-9, I think it's a great game. I think we have a shot late. I think we'll be in the probably 40-yard line late in the game, need a third down, and just can't make the play.
Yeah.
But
I like the prediction.
Yeah.
Yeah, we appreciate the ride that you guys went on with us. If you've listened this far and you're not subscribed yet, please do. We also like to call out on the bottom banner of the YouTube channel, there's a donations box. So if you feel like donating towards the channel, obviously it's not required or anything. We're still going to like you. We're still going to keep doing these episodes. But the money we can put into this, and we're going to be planning on doing this for years to come. So any more incentive to keep on putting these videos out are very much welcomed. Outside of that, we've had. We started this, we were talking before the episode with Nate, our producer, and it's just been an awesome 6-month ride.
Mm-hmm.
We're probably going to be doing this at 6-month increments going forward. We'll start up in July.
Yep.
Maybe we'll do a spring football recap. But it's going to be 6-month runs where it'll be, July to January every year.
Yeah.
Excited for the journey going forward, and really appreciate all the support, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think we can't reiterate enough about how fun of a journey this has been to cover this team, and it just exceeded our expectations so much from where we started and where we kind of saw ourselves at the end of this year. It's just kind of a testament to, how many crazy Iowa fans we have in this fan base. And we're just so thankful to now, have our own aspect of covering this team, even though it's on a week-to-week basis. And we're not breaking news. We're not, doing this reporting thing. We're more just like bringing our knowledge and the time we've had the last 10 years of really following this team closely into this space, and to grow the community we have. It's just been so special, and we're so thankful for it. And we're going to do one more episode to end the year. We're going to do a mailbag episode mixed with season review and a season preview. It's going to be hopefully, possibly 3 hours long or something like that. Maybe we have to cut up in a few episodes, but post any comments about you have for next year, state of the program, recruiting, anything you can think of, post them in the comments. We'll probably get to all of them is our goal for our last episode. But once again, just thanks going along with this ride with us, and we really appreciate it.
Yeah, and also we'll probably have some hats coming out soon. So
yeah,
you see the hat coming probably in black and white. Whoever his wife designed them for us. So shout out to Kelly.
Yeah.
But without further ado, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.